Yeah, welcome everybody. Thanks for your time today and joining the second webinar for Patch My PC in June. Today we're going to be really excited to talk to you about a really cool feature we're working on, and that's how do you get from ConfigMgr to Intune? Specifically talking about apps and helping that migration path, making it easy for you. So really excited, really cool content. Well, I'm going to just brief introduction on who's on the call. So my name is Ben, work here in the engineering team with Patch My PC. Really good to be with you. So I'm going to be driving the demo today with my colleague Liviu, who's in the room.
Yeah, so we're all in the office in Belgium. So my name's David James. I'm the VP of engineering here at Patch My PC. I used to be director of development for Big Man product and engineering team at Microsoft.
And I'm Wout. I'm the director of products for Patch My PC Cloud.
And I'm Liviu, customer engineer at Patch My PC. I don't have quite as an interesting background as Walt and DJ, but I'm the guy who tries to break things internally.
Awesome. Yes, like I said before, really pleased to be here. And so we're talking about migration. When we think about applications, and everybody's got their head in the cloud these days. We're often thinking, what do we do with the technical debt we've built up over years? And that's no different when we think about apps. How do we get the applications from where we built them over the past millennia into the thing we're all working now? And I think, DJ, you're the most qualified person on the call to speak to that, in the sense of, we all started throwing apps in ConfigMgr straight from the cradle, didn't we?
Yeah. So, we can go back to 1.2. But first, I messed up through your slides.
No, you're good. No, you did this, then you did the next thing, then you said, but first.
Okay, but first, all day, I've been in Europe for 3 weeks, and I'm a little time zone left, but all day I've heard a question many times, and that's, are we ready to ship? Are we ready to ship? And we actually just now found we're going to ship Patch My PC Mac, right? So Patch My Mac, right? So that is going to public preview in the next couple hours or minutes, unknown, probably during the webinar. So, we already have almost 150 customers on private preview. So now anyone that's on Patch My PC as a customer or trial will be able to try Macs in their environment. So if that's something you've been waiting for, maybe it will show up during this webinar as it starts pushing out. Or if not, for sure by tomorrow.
Yeah, so really excited about Mac. So yeah, back to the elephant in the room, talking about ConfigMgr. DJ, this is your baby. And this is where we all started, wasn't it?
Yeah. Do you want to go to the next slide? Sorry, then I didn't. Yeah. So, ConfigMgr, it's interesting, and it has a long history. And for people that have been on it for a while, that long history, and you may have been investing or working. Many companies that I've talked to, both here at Patch My PC or back at my days at Microsoft, for many people have got it to a fine-tuned, well-efficient machine that's taken them years or a decade to get to. But that is one of the reasons that migration is hard, right? There's a lot of pressure now to go to the cloud, to go to Intune, and you look at this thing that's working and is working well, and then you look at all the complexity it has, and you go back to the history of it. SMS from 94, 2007. The kind of the SMS era, there was manual packages, programs, offers, if you remember that far back. There were deployments. There's not really detection logic, but then in ConfigMgr or SCCM, System Center Configuration Manager, 2007, 2015, then we added more complexity or more options with applications. Detection methods or applications become state-based, dependencies, supersedence, and then you get to ConfigMgr current branch, and it gets more complex, co-management. There's an app workload to manage, tenant attached, you got app groups. Just the number of ways in ConfigMgr that you could deploy things and the number of options on those different methods is really complex. But for many customers, that is working. And that investment is a big inertia, a big challenge to shift all the way up to the cloud. And so as we looked at this, we realized, this isn't just copy some stuff and it's going to work. A lot of this stuff isn't even transferable to the way the Intune applications work. And this is why we've kind of gone down this path of building a migration solution to I've kind of been calling it this week like almost a consultant in a box that's going to help you deal with all these different ways that you need to handle migration.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. That technical debt built up over, what was it, 2 decades? Config Manager? Yeah. There's a lot there. And it's often one of the tricky things when we're working with customers in support. And, one of the questions that comes up is, we do apps really well, and we do patching really well, and we take that burden off of customers. But there are still a lot of line of business applications customers use, and they might be because they're not suitable for our catalog, other reasons. And there's still a business requirement to deploy them and manage them in the environment. And then so that's still a challenge. We'll talk a bit about the challenge as we go through the webinar, but things like content, shifting content up to the cloud. How do we do that? Are you intimately familiar with the Graph API and how to shift stuff up? It definitely gets a little bit more complex. And if you don't think about the automation side of things, it's then very manual. And we'll speak to that again in the next couple of slides. And you do not want to be doing it manually. It's a complete nightmare. So next slide, Corey, if you don't mind. So I guess what we're saying is that technical debt builds up over years. We add applications, they're just left in config manager, which is great. They work. We build an app, we deploy it, assign it out to a collection. People use it. That's great. And that multiplied over the number of years we've invested in config manager equals a lot of applications. And that's really the problem we're trying to outline. We have all this technical debt in config manager. It's not always straightforward. Apps could have been added by admin 1. Admin 1 retired 20 years ago. Admin 2 and 3 got no idea what this thing does, or the impact of it not being deployed out to their clients. So this is really something Patch My PC wants to solve. It's not just about lifting and shifting years of technical debt into Intune. It's about doing it in a smarter way, and that's something else we'll touch on in this webinar. So yeah, Corey, that cues us up nextly to the next slide. So I guess when we think about moving to the cloud, that there's so many things, and apps is probably just one of the balls that you have to juggle, but it's a very important ball to juggle. And we are not going to tell our customers there's no way of you moving your stuff from config manager to the cloud. We're not going to say go and build it manually. And we're very much invested in helping customers save time. So that's not a song we're willing to sing from the hymn sheet. So on the next slide, Corey, if you don't mind. Now, one of the massive challenges when you look at the complexity of an application in configuration manager. I mean, config manager is a super workhorse. It does a lot of things, and it does a lot of things well, but behind it doing things well, there is some complexity that's abstracted away from you as an admin. And if we take the application model as one example of that, and we look at some of the properties involved, if you look at an application in the config manager database, you look at the XML that contains all the attributes and parameters required to make the application deployment successful, you're talking about a significant number of fields you would have to track in order to understand how you would map those properties to an application you're creating in Intune. And we've pulled out the absolute requirements here as an example. So there's 46 fields. You would have to go through each application, 46 fields, to get the necessary data and content you would need in order to create an equivalent Win32 app. And that's no joke. And that's just field properties. You then start to think about content. And we don't just copy and paste from content source or content library into Azure Blob Storage for Intune. We have to wrap that up into an Intune Win. So this has been around for a number of years now. Everybody's intimately familiar with it. The Intune Win App util.exe. It wraps up your content, secures it, and compresses it pretty much, and then pings it off to Azure Blob Storage when you're uploading your Win32 apps. And so we have these number of elements. We have to get the metadata to config manager to understand how to successfully create its equivalent in Intune as a Win32 app. And then we also have to find a way of dealing with the content. And like I said before, this stuff can be automated if you're intimately familiar with the Graph API. But the one thing, and we're going to talk to this on the next slide, Corey, if you don't mind, we don't see a tremendous amount of value in you lifting and shifting all that old technical debt into Intune and just being left with the same problem again. You have all these applications, you maybe aren't intimately familiar with all of them, and you've just dumped them there, and it's somebody else's problem to deal with in a few years' time. So we're going to be a little bit smarter with our approach. And so we think of it as like when you're moving home, moving apps from ConfigMgr to the cloud. You know, when you're moving house, maybe you don't box up everything and move it across the new home. Maybe during that move, you're thinking, well, I could probably do with some new carpets in the new home, or some new curtains, or, you know, new cooker or new sofa or something. You know, you take the opportunity to understand what you have and whether it's fit for purpose for where you're going to. And we fundamentally believe, like, if you have applications in ConfigMgr, and for example, they're vulnerable to, you know, there's a CVE that impacts that application, it's been built by somebody, you don't have the most up-to-date version, we want to let you know that. We want to inform you, and we want to help you upgrade the application to a version that is not impacted by the same vulnerability. So next slide, Corey. I think this is where we really want to focus on the differentiator between lifting and shifting and doing things smarter. So I can talk to this unless anybody else wants to chip in. They're on mute at that end.
Yeah, we just unmuted.
Or something.
Yeah, go ahead, Ben, and then I'll add.
So yeah, what we're saying is we're not just lifting and shifting. You know, we can be much more smart about that. So there's two approaches we have initially for private preview, and we're going to expand on these and give more opportunity as well as the feature matures. So the first thing we're going to do is we will update your applications. So we will confidently match the applications you have in ConfigMgr through a variety of methods and metadata. And we will say, we are supremely confident that the application you have there matches an application that already exists in the Patch My PC catalog. So instead of moving the application, which may be vulnerable, let us match it to a catalog app and publish it that way with the same install arguments you have and the same customizations you have pretty much in the ConfigMgr app. So that's smart because we're moving you to a catalog application that our team is going to update for the life of the application. That's smart. You know, you don't need to look in ConfigMgr to understand if your applications are out of date or if they need an update. That's taken care of. So that's one of the first things where we're going to add value in the migration feature. Forever up-to-date apps, honoring the command lines you have. We understand that not every application is just install MSI/QN. You have like API token keys or license files and other things going on. So that's the first thing we're going to do with migration. The second thing we'll do, if we cannot match your application to something in our catalog, we will migrate it as a custom application. We'll talk a little bit more about what that nuance is if you're not familiar with the custom apps feature in Patch My PC. Essentially what it is, your application won't change. The installation behavior will remain the same, but we're going to leverage some of the Patch My PC customizations that some of our customers, or all of our customers, love. So we will move your apps, and we will help you leverage features like manage conflicting processes, where in our intelligence, we understand if applications must be closed down before they're installed, otherwise the application update will fail. So we will help migrate your apps into that model. So you can ask your users to close the app before it gets updated to ensure that installation is successful. You can leverage things like pre and post scripts. Let's do something before the app installs, and let's do something after the application installs. Maybe you want to migrate your applications in and add them to your ESP profile for autopilot. I've just picked 3 off the top of my brain that I particularly like. I think there's over 30 different customizations we can do, and that list is growing. So,
and Ben, let me add too. You know, as Ben said, basically we analyze the apps in ConfigMgr and we slot them into different buckets. And one of the buckets is it's just in our catalog. That's easy because we basically can take it over for you and make it really easy. It's updated on your schedule, whatever you want. But One of the other buckets that we have is if we see that you're using PSADT in your applications in ConfigMan, we are now the stewards of PowerShell App Deploy Toolkit. There's a lot of benefit in that free open source tool, but for customers that are using it, we can go in and analyze certain configurations in that and bring the configuration into our intelligence and make decisions and help you make decisions on that as well, right? So some of what Ben talks about, we can bring in and you get intelligently, almost automatically from because you're using PSADT. So that's just a good example of where we're adding intelligence on top of just what some people might say is kind of a lift and shift.
So we're really excited. The feature's currently in private preview, working really well. We're going to show you that today. We're going to show you some examples of migrating some apps. But the roadmap for migration is amazing. And so next slide, Corey, we're just going to kind of hat tilt towards what we're doing today and what we have planned for the future. I don't know if you want to speak to this one, perhaps.
So,
Oh yeah, I can speak to this. I'm gonna go back and speak to something that I forgot to talk about, and then I'll speak to this slide. One of the challenges too with moving from ConfigMan to Intune is the number of gaps that Intune has compared to ConfigMan. For example, there's not a depth of imaging in Intune that there is in ConfigMan. Autopilot is good at what it's good at, but it's not the depth of OSD in ConfigMan. There's three big migration challenges. One is applications, one is images, one is settings in GPO. We intend to help on all of these. And right now, even in applications, you'll see that it's a journey where what we have in private preview right now, we'll call phase one, is the analysis, migration, being able to automatically migrate apps that are in certain buckets. And in phase two, towards the end of the summer, we'll have more intelligence, more app types, more data and dashboards. So you'll see that we're kind of on a iteration and a journey in this. And a lot of what we're demoing today, which is in private preview, is in phase one. We'll talk more about that. But just know that there's more coming and we'll have in preview by the end of the summer. The other thing I'll say is just to call back to last month's webinar, one of the huge gaps in Intune is in reporting. We also have in private preview right now our advanced insights for Intune solution, which is a reporting and analytics solution for Intune. Go back and watch that webinar. It posted on YouTube, I believe, Corey, for last month, and we'll have more to talk about in the future. And you'll see that our advanced insights for Intune solution works really well with our migration solution. So the depth of reporting we can do once you get to Intune will help close the gap of what you would have been missing if you just were moving from ConfigMan to Intune and didn't have that detailed reporting solution. They play really well together.
Awesome. And if you want to catch up with any of the webinars, if you've missed them, patchmypc.com/webinar. That's a good one to link out as well. So I guess it's safe to say we're pretty excited about this feature. I think we have one more slide before we go into the labs, just to give you a taste of what we can do. So I guess the headline takeaway for me, as Leview and I have been prepping for this webinar and the demos, is lifting and shifting is bad, evolving your apps is good. So if you agree with us on that, you're in good company. Which takes us to showing you some stuff.
So the bottom part is the part that we're going to add to the PatchMyPC Publisher UI. So if you're all using Publisher today, then very soon, in the middle of July, you'll see this additional data pop up where you can enable application migration to PatchMyPC Cloud. What we're going to do in there is, if you enable that feature, what we're going to do is we're going to analyze the apps that you have in ConfigMgr. We're going to let you know which applications we can migrate for you, and that will make it really easy for you to migrate all of those apps to Intune.
Yeah, it's, I spoke about it coming in two phases. We have some customers already invited to private preview. If you want to get into private preview, obviously, we'll have a link to get waitlisted, but we will require you to turn this on so that we can see how many of your apps we can just automatically migrate. And that will be a selection criteria for private preview. So if you really are passionate about getting to private preview, you're going to want to go turn this on. But also, if you just have a lot of apps and you want us to help give you information before you're ready to use our feature, that's another reason to use Analyze. So, but this will help us better understand where we can put more intelligence into our system to help migrate apps based on the kind of apps that are out there.
Just a quick note for those that might want to join the private preview early. There is no guarantee that you'll be selected, but please fill out the form. If you go in Zoom on resources, just next to the Q&A option, there's going to be a sign up button that you can press and just register your interest.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody. So, yeah, very simple. So Patch My PC Publisher, this is a tool you're familiar with today. If you're one of our customers and you're publishing applications and updates through to ConfigMgr by WSUS. So what we need to do is we need to connect the Patch My PC Publisher to the Patch My PC Cloud instance. So let's just go through this demo then. So I have here an instance of Patch My PC Cloud. And the first thing I've done is I've created a connection. So I have a connection to Patch My PC Publisher. That's very simple to do. It's all initiated from the publisher. You just connect and you sign in with the same account you're using for the Patch My PC portal, and all the magic is done for you. And what we see with the enable application migration feature enabled, we're pulling all that rich metadata for your applications in ConfigMgr from the XML. And we're just putting it into the Patch My PC Cloud instance for you only. And we're just analyzing that data to understand what can we do with it. So in my lab here, I have a node called migration because migration is enabled. And what this has done is it's brought in all the applications I have in ConfigMgr. So very small, maybe in comparison to the number of applications you have in your environment, just 13. So let's do a quick fact check here, Ben. So in my ConfigMgr environment, I have 12 applications here that I've built. And I have one application deployed here from the Patch My PC Publisher. So 13 apps in total. So that squares away nicely. Now, let's see what information we're bringing across. So let's take an example of, let's find Notepad. I think we brought here Notepad. So this is something that Notepad is quite a common app to patch, to build yourself, and you may have it in ConfigMgr. So we're going to use that as the first example. So if I search for Notepad, I'm going to look at the one that I've deployed to IT support. Just to call a couple of things out here in the console. In ConfigMgr, this will be your application. And underneath the application will be your deployment types. So we are going to help you migrate the deployment type into Intune as a Win32 app. We're going to take information from both the deployment type and the application to make that successful. So things like when you look at the SDN package XML, the icon information and the really nice descriptions of things all kept within the application part of the XML, and all of the stuff we need to do to install the app is kept within the deployment type. So the deployment type is the one we're going to be lifting and shifting intelligently. So if I click on this one here now, it shows me that this has matched it to a Patch My PC app. And we have 3 different match types we can do. We can either map it to a custom app, which means we haven't found your application in our catalog yet. Our catalog is accelerating very fast, but we're going to help you move it to Intune nonetheless as a custom app. If it's matched as a Patch My PC app, we know it's in our catalog. We're looking at the metadata for the application, and there's a number of different things we do to confidently identify what it is. And we will deploy it as a Patch My PC application into Intune, and we will forever keep that up to date for you. At the moment in private preview, we may see a few applications that come through as not supported. I don't have any, and that just might mean like
you are filtering on Notepad. That's why I didn't have any.
It might be I do have one actually. Thanks, Val. Okay, it might be a PSADT app. So here's one here. This is a PSADT app. And this one is an application we've published from the publisher to ConfigMgr. So it makes no sense. You know, if we've published it from publisher, It makes no sense to migrate it. Let's just publish it from Patch My PC Cloud into Intune. So we're going to go through a couple of examples. Let's stick with Notepad. So if we click on the application, we can see here, this is the information we've brought across from Publisher. So we're tracking the normal things you'd expect us to track if we're looking to migrate applications. So the synchronization, we do an initial sync and then we do delta syncs after that on a schedule. So we are constantly looking at the application revision. So if you're revising content, you're updating the deployment type or you're updating the application, we're going to make sure the information is up to date here. So when we do the migration, we have the latest information that we've seen in ConfigMgr. In this view as well, we're going to call out some of the things that might change during migration, and we'll talk about this. And especially early on in preview, some of the things that we're not going to migrate if we see it on an application in ConfigMgr. And this is why you opting into the migration feature is really helpful. So, for example, in private preview, we don't have support for supersedence and dependencies. That is coming. We are building it, but to help us understand how important that is to you, we really need to see the applications you have and to see how prevalent that feature is used. Okay. We do things like this application doesn't have one. We look at the assignments. If you have any bespoke requirements, we know the detection rules you have in ConfigMgr. And we didn't touch on this, but this is really interesting. When you migrate into Intune, there is not a like-for-like on detection rules either. So yes, if you've got scripted detection, that's pretty straightforward to throw over. But as an example, in ConfigMgr, you can have nested conditions for your detection types. So you could say this file must exist and this file must be this version, or this registry key must exist and it must be, the value must be this version. Intune, the Win32 app model, has no concept of the or operand. So we can't just say, let's move all the rules from ConfigMgr to Intune. And that's where we're coming in with a little bit more intelligence and helping you move those across. So we're putting out all the normal things you'd expect to see on the application model in ConfigMgr. So let's see what a migration looks like. So we're going to migrate this across from ConfigMgr into Intune as a Patch My PC application. You can see here that I have a install parameter, which is kind of unique to this particular app in ConfigMan. You know, so in the Patch My PC catalog, we would typically deploy the program with a /s, just silent for this specific app. So I want to bring across the no updated parameter too. So let's migrate this application over. If you see anything interesting in chat, Libby, just shout out if people are asking questions as we're going through this. So the first thing to call out, really, I'm migrating version 8.7.6 from on-prem, and it's matching that to version 8.8.1 in the Patch My PC catalog. So that's cool. We're bringing it up to spec, remove those vulnerabilities. We're also bringing across that command line parameter that's important to me. So that's cool. Thumbs up. So we're not just saying, oh, we're going to disregard everything you've built over the last millennia and just match it against Patch My PC and that's it. We are helping you. We understand the customizations you've made on your apps are important. So this is kind of going through the custom apps flow. If you're familiar with the custom apps feature, if you're not, the custom apps feature, we can add a ton of customizations on top of your applications. So things like we can add prescripts. So if you want to do something before an application installs, so if you want to add in a reg command or something, we can do that. We can associate dependencies with Win32 apps, manage your scope tags, add extra files and folders to the application as well. We can do that as part of this flow, and a few more things, which I won't touch on. But if you haven't seen the custom apps webinar, there's a ton of information, patchmypc.com/webinar, and search for the custom apps webinar for the really good, useful information. So I'm bringing this through the flow. I'm going to have a look at the ConfigMgr assignments list. So there's nothing in there. So this is kind of helping me understand. In private preview, we are not going to try and match groups, match your assignments to collections to enter groups. Not yet. But this is kind of helpful hint for you at this stage to say, well, you've deployed this as available to all users. So maybe as you're bringing it through the flow to bring it into Intune, you want to make it available to all users. So let's do that here. And we'll say migrate. So what this is doing now, we have all that metadata we need. We have the connection to the publisher. The content is being uploaded. And we're doing that all that complexity that the Intune WinApp util does in terms of wrapping apps, sending it to Azure Blob Storage. And so this is in progress. So I'd expect to see this in Intune any second. While that's cooking, it's only going to take a few seconds. Here's a couple we did earlier. So I have the Canon MF scan utility in ConfigMan. So if I come back here and look at this application, you can see we have icons and descriptions and user documentation in here. If we look at the deployment type, we have like detection methods. So this particular one is looking for an executable that's greater than a specific version. And this is the information we migrate across to Intune. So Notepad is finished. I want to come back to Notepad. We won't forget her. But if I come into the Intune Admin Center and look at that Canon application I migrated previously, we can see we brought all the information across. We brought across descriptions, logos. If we look at the detection rules, we've brought across those detection rules as well. It's pretty cool. The Notepad app that we just migrated just now, here it is. So again, we've matched this to a Patch My PC application. So all this information is that rich metadata we have in the Patch My PC catalog. Cool. Okay, so now let's move to another app. Let's show another example.
One interesting question that came up in the chat, Ben, is related to apps with multiple deployment types.
Yeah.
And the plan is to also support the migration of apps with multiple deployment types. But I'm really curious if people could type in the chat, how many apps do you actually still package with multiple deployment types? There are situations in which you may want to use that, but I'm curious how many people still use multiple deployment types for an app nowadays. Way too many, says Michael.
Okay, I'm going to do so let's do how fast can we shift apps? So we have an app here, Angry IP Scanner. This is something we do have in the Patch My PC catalog. So we've matched it to a Patch My PC application. So let's click on Migrate. And again, we can add all the customizations we want to here. We're honoring your settings in the Config Manager application. I'm just going to come in here and say that I don't want any assignments, just create the app for me. I'm going to deal with the assignments later, and that's it. So click, 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 done. And the reason that's great is because I did have the same version on-prem, but I would be responsible for keeping it up to date. And we've done some calculations on this, and we estimate probably 3 to 5 hours it takes you per application, per update each time. So that's understanding when the vendor releases an update, downloading it, testing it, making sure that uninstalls the previous version, making sure the vendor hasn't changed anything in where they put detection in the registry for that version. You know, vendors do all sorts of things to trip us up sometimes. So the point I'm getting to there is we had that version in Config Manager already, but now we've matched it to a Patch My PC app. We're going to keep that forever up to date for you. Okay, so let's take another one. So we've matched a couple of Patch My PC apps. Let's take an application through that we don't have in our catalog. So I've picked a couple that are created in Config Manager that we've seen in our ideas portal. So the first one I want to look at is this one just stood out. I don't know why, it's the name, Burp Suite Community Edition. So this is an application that customers have asked for. It's not yet in our catalog. And I actually asked our catalog team to hold off adding it so I could demo it in this webinar. So I'd imagine it's going to be in there pretty soon. But if we just take a look at the properties of this again. So here's an application my app team would have built. We've got icons and descriptions and things in there. The deployment type for this application. So we've got a -Q here. So this app There's a bizarre silent install, but it does some self-extractions. So that's the -q. We're actually looking for the file version on disk as well. Cool. Okay, so what does this look like? So we're bringing this through as a custom app. We've matched it as a custom app, not a Patch My PC app. So let's do the migration for Burp Suite. Actually, before we do, there's another thing on here I wanted to highlight. So we can do things like, and this is cool. So if we look at the deployment type, don't use this feature, but if you have, so the install behavior means this application will not install if this executable is running. It's like a poor cousin version of what we're doing with the manage conflicting processes feature in Patch My PC, where we can see if there's a specific application running, we can prompt your users if they want to close it so we can patch it successfully. But just for the purpose of this demo, we are going to bring this information across because it is useful for us for our manage conflicting processes feature. So let's go back to the flow. Let's carry on here, Ben. So this is a custom app. We've pulled in all the information that we need to build the Win32 app from ConfigMgr. If we look at the install parameters, we can add our additional ones here if we've got anything else we want to add. We can make allow available uninstall. If I look back on the general tab here, this is the thing I want to call out, conflicting processes. So we're taking that information from ConfigMgr, bringing it through the custom app flow so that we can prompt your users to close the app as it's deploying, if you want us to.
A quick note here would be if you are using an MSI installer, you don't have to specify the conflicting processes process name on the installation behavior tab. Our feature will instead try to extract the conflicting process from the MSI property table and just populate the field. Sorry if you were going to speak about this, Ben.
No, you're good. You're good. You're good. You are in a different time zone to me, so that's why you're ahead of me, Liviu.
Okay, sorry. I will remember if you're going to talk about it.
This is a worthy call out, detection rules. So you've seen that we can just match the ConfigMgr detection rules confidently. So here I'm going to choose to say, well, I'm going to base detection on the version of the file on disk. We can do it for you if you want. So with the custom apps flow, you can choose to let us identify it. So through our years of experience, we've built some pretty cool PowerShell scripts. So we will use the information in this flow and from ConfigMgr, where we can script that detection for you confidently. So you get to choose whether you want to use your own rules or whether you want us to take over that for you too. So I'm going to say, let's use the Patch My PC rule and do a migration. Cool, so Burp Suite is coming across. And I'm just going to show you the additional file that Liviu is talking about. So let's take this MSI. So Lucanet Software Manager. Here's another real quick one we're going to run through. So this one in ConfigMan. Again, there's no smoke and mirrors here. So if we look at, which one am I migrating? IT. So if we look at the deployment type for IT, and this is one of the last ones we'll demo. So if we look in the content source folder, so I've got a picture in there, but this is just the demo that we're going to pick up multiple files in these content source folders. We go back to the flow. So there we can see we've picked up any extra files that were needed for the installation. We're going to go through this flow. As Liviu rightly said, because it's an MSI, with MSIs, we can query the MSI properties table to pull out even more information that might be useful. So we can see in the MSI property table that this application is going to possibly use these executables in the program. So we can use these with our manage conflicting processes feature to understand if the app is running in order to understand if we need to shut it down to patch it successfully. So I'm just going to run through this throw really quickly. I'm not going to change anything. I'm just going to say, let's make this one available for all users because that's what we like to do. Put everything in the company portal. And so that one's migrating fine. Burp Suite has migrated as well. So if we just do a cursory look in Intune now, we can see there's Burp Suite. So Burp Suite, we did have some detection methods looking at the file version on disk, but we chose through the migration that we wanted to change the Patch My PC detection method. So we have a custom detection script that we've built on the fly to accurately check whether Burp Suite is installed or not. So it's pretty cool. If we give it a couple of seconds, we'll probably see that other MSI pop in real quick. So this wasn't in progress. Instead of just waiting for this one to finish, I want to talk about one of the exciting things to come, and there's tons of stuff to come, and we'll talk about that in a second. But DJ mentioned early on about PSADT. So as we work through the feature list in private preview, one of the things we're going to do is add more intelligence and support around you migrating PSADT applications from ConfigMgr. So this was one example I called it early on, where this glazed WM application that I've seen is currently not supported because it's a PSADT app. So if I look at this one, so the deployment type is going to give it away. So PSADT version 4. So if I look at this application and say, well, let's look at the content source. If anybody doesn't use PSADT, put a thumbs up. Oh, cool. If I look at my PowerShell script for this particular application, you're probably familiar with the structure here where you have a pre-install section, an installation section, and a post-install section. We're doing some really cool stuff so we will migrate this for you as a custom application so you can leverage all of our customizations. But we're also mindful that this stuff is really important to you. So we will take this type of information out of your PSADT script and start matching it and doing cool stuff like this. So here's one we deployed earlier. We will say, well, we know you want to keep using PSADT, but let's help you. And let's split your pre and post commands here so you can edit them directly in the UI when you're doing your deployments. That's just one example of some of the really cool stuff we're planning when we look at PSADT migration flows. But again, by opting in and allowing us to see your configuration manager and how you use it, that application information is really important because it really helps us understand what our customers are doing and helps us possibly prioritize which features we're adding in here. And I think that's pretty much what we wanted to show you today. Like we can see stuff in ConfigMgr, we can migrate it, we can match it to a catalog app, we can bring it as a custom app. So yeah, hopefully that was cool. I don't think I missed anything of you, did I? Keep me honest.
Yeah, I think for what we had in phase one, Ben, you covered it pretty well. You know, we really are looking for customers to turn on the analyze feature because that will help us drive our innovation. We're nowhere close to where we want to be for how much we can do. You know, there's more things that we can take into account, things like where things are being targeted, you know, what devices, what users, we can take that into account because migration isn't just about moving your apps from one to the other. It's also about moving your devices and moving your people and going through from tenant attached to co-managed to Intune. And so there could be scenarios, for example, if we can analyze and be, you know, all your finance users, this is a set of apps they have. And once we move those apps, now you can move your finance users. So, you know, we really are kind of asking you to turn on the analyze feature and it will drive and allow us to accelerate our innovation and do even more than what you saw today.
And to address a question from the chat, if anyone wants to opt into the private preview, I think in July, you said, Jen, something like that, or well, in the near future.
So if they want to do private preview today,
if they want to do the read.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
So the next time we ship Publisher, we have a preview ring for Publisher that will go out next week, or it goes to everybody, the full ring in the week after. So in the next, you know, if you're in preview, you can turn it on next week. If you're in, you're not in preview, you can turn it on in 2 weeks.
we join.
Oh, sorry. First 2 weeks of July.
But there is in Zoom under resources, just next to the QA section, there is a sign up button. And if you want to join the private preview a bit early, just register there.
Awesome. I love this feature. It's amazing now. It's going to be super amazing as we iterate on this. Was there anything else in Q&A that was worthy of a call out, or we missed, Liviu, or was it all handled very well?
We have an enterprise premium SKU. Our intelligence, our ability to do all the migration automatically, that will be part of our enterprise premium. It will just be included with that. It goes hand in hand with our advanced insights solutions, both for ConfigMan on the reporting side and the Intune side. And they use the same data collection, reporting. If you look at our webinar from last month, the amount of data that we collect on Intune clients, like all this starts giving you a full kind of data set and rich experience. So that's part of our premium experience. In Enterprise Plus, you can still turn it on and get analyzing and get some interesting data that might help you do the migration yourself manually. But our automatic application migrations in our Enterprise Premium SKU.
Awesome.
Once we go GA, as long as we're in Prime Preview.
Yeah, if you're in Private Preview, you can use it even if you're in Enterprise Plus.
There's another really great question, and I'm sorry I skipped over it. I assume a lot, but when we go through the flow, like I did a mention about, we can show you what assignments you have on your ConfigMgr apps to help you understand where you should be deploying them to Entra. And we are going to iterate on that and be smarter with that as well. But for now, when you're going through the migration flow, you can choose whether you want to assign the application or not. So if you're slightly cautious and you want to do a lot of manual testing, you can bring it through with no assignments. That's totally cool. We can support you with that. You can deploy it as available, as required, pretty standard stuff. And you just pick your Entra ID groups from this list. You can also leverage our update rings feature, which is mega cool, where you can deploy this application in waves as an application or as an update. So we can use different rings to deploy the application in stages across your environment. So this is a feature that anybody who uses Patch My PC Cloud is probably already familiar with. If you haven't seen this yet, I do encourage you, and I think there's something in the resources, patchmypc.com/webinar, and have a look at the Patch My PC Cloud webinar we did.